how did you all come up with the 3 stories? And how did you build the movement vocabulary for them? And please introduce yourselves.
Well, all right, I'm Jason.
I'm Karla, Garcia. I'm the choreographer.
I'm Daisy Prince, and I directed the show.
I'm Jonathan Marc Sherman. I just crashed.
All right, each of the 3 stories actually came from a different place. One of the first ideas we had for the show was that there were going to be these stories and they were going to be musicalized. The first story, the Scrabble story, was not originally a Scrabble story. I had written a treatment for a song. It was a whole story about a kid in Pennsylvania, in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania, who was on a Little League team and had gotten his whole team on steroids so that they could win the championship. So I did a version of that, then Sherman came on board, and we turned that into a big song. And the problem with that song is that it needed a 15-year-old boy to do it, and it needed to be a 15-year-old boy with arms like a gorilla. So Daisy said that probably wasn't practical. So when we were workshopping one of the productions up at Princeton, one of the few things that Sherman and I really have an expertise on is Scrabble. And so we thought, well, let's just write what we know, since writing about Little League did not come easily. And so we came up with the Scrabble song there. The Wind in My Sails, there was originally a political operative in Kentucky that the song was about, and his name was Striddy. And Striddy used to talk about how he had manipulated the entire environment, and it was like this big expose of a big political fixer in Kentucky. And then we just thought one day, this is stupid. And so we didn't do that. And I said, why don't we do something like, a little Marion Barry, a little Sharp James. We'll sort of do something closer to home. It's a New York magazine. Let's do something in Jersey City. And so I think that's how that one came up. The Western Wall, Sherman had just an idea about the Western Wall and someone gathering prayers from the Western Wall. And I filled in a lot of it when I was writing it. I just remember writing it in sort of one fevered, crazy night. It was, again, everyone who works with me knows it all happens at the last minute. So we were in a reading at New York Theater Workshop and everyone had gone home. And at like 9 o'clock, I just never left the rehearsal room. And I just texted Daisy and Sherman. I was like, how's this? And that was the Western Wall. So that's what I remember for it. However, the movement vocabulary, which came around much later and is all the responsibility of one person, I will leave in the hands of Ms. Garcia.
So I came in and just tried to support what they've all been envisioning for years for each of those moments. And the Scrabble number was whimsical and celebratory and kind of reflecting the character and the fun of it, and it's colorful. And then Wind in My Sails, we wanted to support the Willis character with kind of a stress juxtaposed with power that he goes in and out of that moment. So that was a different vibe. And then the Western Wall was super fun to kind of play with. Daisy had led me to a video of a man teaching Jewish celebratory dances and gestures, and she said to just fly with that and be inspired by that. And along with that, I wanted to layer over an entanglement of Ethan's lies and how he creates his own web of chaos, and the ensemble can, have that and create that for him in space. And so just kind of like went with that, and that's basically what the movement did. Thank you.
Well,
Can I just say one thing?
I'm sorry. I just want to say what Karla has done, and the more I look at it, and I mean, she knows I feel this way, but it can't stand repeating, is so extraordinary. Because to create a movement language that's specific to every piece with a bunch of non-dancers, don't get mad at me, they get mad when I say there wasn't a dance call, let's put it that way. And people of varying ages who are going to be dancing in suits. this, okay? The idea of sort of being able to create movement that makes sense within this environment that's both fabulous and exciting, and at the same time is not exactly dance, but is more than just movement. And I think her job was and is extraordinary. I think it's incredibly hard to do, and I think she's done it brilliantly.
I actually want to dig in just a little bit more about that movement vocabulary of the Western Wall and unpack some of what you were saying about Ethan's lies and how we would perceive that in that movement vocabulary.
Sure, yeah, and you know, it comes at a very pivotal point in the show where everything is boiling up, and I think we see that from a lot of Ben's actions and his physicality in general before he even starts that number. So I think I just wanted to support that and use the number as a vehicle to send him into just his ultimate demise at the end. So I feel like it was really exciting to have all those bodies in space and to literally create a wall. And you know, with the music and the lyrics, you kind of sort of realize that he's making all these stories up within that time and place. So he is all these people, he also puts himself in it, and to me, he creates himself as God in it. So he's answering all the prayers, he's also writing the prayers, and so that was really fun to emulate in movement and vocabulary, and I just kind of like went with it. And the music is just so dynamic that it allowed me to just compose different shapes through their bodies and inspired by the gestures that we spoke about. So, yeah.
Amazing. Sherm, I know that Daisy and Jason had been working on this for a little while before you came in. How did you come into this?
They asked me and I said yes. They started working in 2011. Daisy came up, started thinking that a Fabulist would be a great character in the musical in 2003. They have done 2 musicals previous to this one. I really wanted them to do a third as a groupie. So selfishly, first of all, anything I could do to get another score out of one of our greatest musical theater composers, I would do, and to get another show out of one of our greatest musical theater directors, I would do. So, I used to say, well, I can't sing, and I can't dance, and I can't play an instrument, and I can't read or write music. So the only thing I could do for a musical was either go to see it, or write the book. But that's for crazy people. You know, you hear these nutty stories that they take 100 years to get on, and it's a third of the royalty, and you're fighting with everybody, and then you get fired, and if it's good, that no one mentions you, and if it's bad, it's all your fault. All of which is true. And so I thought, well, there's about 5 people on this planet that I would want to do that for. And 2 of those people called me in 2011 and said, we've done 2 of your favorite shows together. We want to do a third one, but this one needs a book writer. And before they could wisen up and call somebody else, I said, yeah, I'd like to do that, please. Please let me do that. Thank you. And they have yet to fire me. And it's 2024, so.
I'd love to take some questions. Does anybody out here have a question? Yes, please.
First of all, congratulations for the show. Also, greetings from Bowling Green, Ohio, Mr. Brown from Sam Adler.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He's still kicking?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of your professors from Eastman.
Sam Adler was my composition teacher at music school in 1987.
I had a question. So, as running like an hour and 45, hour 50, why no intermission, and did you consider putting one in?
No, I mean, I I mean, I think in a lot of ways, the pulling a very taut line through the show is important, and I think, you know, intermissions they're an interesting construct. I mean, we've all gotten used to them, but of course, we also sit and watch, like we binge 7 hours of television without getting up to go to the bathroom, and it never even occurs to us. So I've never been sure exactly what, like, you know, when I do big commercial musicals, we build in for an intermission, but there wasn't like a midpoint where I was like, all right, let's stop there and keep the audience in suspense. I thought instead we'd stop and the audience would be like, are we done? So to me, it was very important. We just keep pulling, you know, the string very tightly.
I also think this is a slow burn of a show. And you can't do a slow burn with pause in the middle. It starts out very funny, he's very affable, things happen. And unless you don't quite know the moment where you're getting pulled in toward the end, I think it's not as effective. So that's sort of, in terms of what we were trying to do, it didn't make sense. But I quite enjoy a show that's in one act, I do, gotta admit.
Yeah, no, I like going home. Really,
And to that end, let's take one more question. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about your process for writing for women characters and women in the workplace and what their experience and frustrations are?
Can I talk a
question,
little
if you
bit
couldn't
about-
hear yes, go ahead.
Can I talk a little about my process for writing for women characters and women in the workplace and how I sort of do that? Well, you know, there's this weird trope about musical theater writers, because, you know, historically, mostly men, and you know, the thing about how they just write women so well. And I've never wanted to sort of be kind of like the embodiment of that particular trope. I want to write all the characters well, whether they're women or whether they're men. But I think the specifics of what Robin goes through in this piece, I think are very much informed by, I mean, first of all, I live with a raging, ardent feminist who created an entire organization that's just about women in the workplace. So that's, you know, like, in my house. And I also had, while we were working on this, I was writing Bridge to Madison County with Marcia, and Marcia is also sort of a raging, she's a much quieter raging feminist, but I, you know, feel that her line is the linchpin of Cassandra. Half the stories in the world are left unwritten is Marcia. And so I think I'm just surrounded by the world, and so I take it in, and I felt like Robin needed to speak these particular things in this particular story. So, you know, I happen to be surrounded by smart, talented women who feel a lot of entirely justifiable frustrations, and occasionally they share them with me, and then I get to write songs about them.
Yeah, one more question.
There's definitely a bias towards the center. I apologize to people on the sides.
When deciding to create these side pictures, when did the process of that happen, and like, I guess just in general, when does that need to create these immersive pictures happen?
Well, for me, sorry, I'm going to talk in my bike voice now, so it's not quite so abrasive. Beowulf and I have worked together before, and I came from a sort of history of very visually oriented theater, with the saying over and over again, nagging in my brain, if I can't see it, I can't do it. And so that has been repeating in my brain as well. So I've wanted to stage this for a million years. I've done more, you know, people standing at mics with music stands. But in terms of sort of the basic visual, I knew I didn't want it to be literal. I knew I wanted it to be very abstract because I wanted it to be very abstract. I knew, and Beowulf and I talked a lot about, we've done another show that involves paper, and in fact, paper flying from the sky. In the last 5 years when we did it, right before Moving Too Fast, I don't know if you know the song, but he's starting to find success. And so the success is sort of thrust upon him. This is the exact opposite version of that kind of paper falling, but the very beginning of Moving Too Fast is a whole lot of paper falling down onto him. At the very end, it ends up being his book. So that we've sort of played with before. As for the sides, I knew I wanted everybody to be present. I knew I wanted to call attention to the idea that we are all storytelling. So I knew I also wanted to have access to the musicians. And Beowulf, at first we had just had the deck and the back wall. And when we were talking about how everybody would be on stage, I didn't want it to be sort of the Garcia thing of everybody sitting on the stage staring seriously at what was going on. I actually wanted there to be a full sort of rich, independent life for all of those people. And for them to be sitting in that world. So it all happened fairly easily right after we saw this, and also this theater. I have to take a moment to talk about this theater because, I mean, look at the space we're given. So really, it's just a dream, you know. What you may lack in depth, you much more than make up for in width. And so your imagination is free to wander. And Beowulf, who is not here, but you know, is extraordinary and a great collaborator. That all came in. I would say some of it came in super early, like right at the beginning. We were talking about being able to do shadow work as well in the stories. Couldn't really figure out how to do that, so we pivoted. Yeah, and it all, the minute that we had this theater, everything else became much more clear. So, long-winded answer.
That is great. Jason, Karla, Daisy, Sherman, thank you all so much for sharing your time